All right, well, here we are gathered together. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, this is a crazy wind coming in here, or breeze. It's this, but it seems to be sort of moving that. I don't know, it's all good. Anyway, we're glad to have air conditioning, right? Mm-hmm. Yay! All right, well, here I am. Welcome. Here you are. We're glad you are here with us tonight. And we're glad we're here for Jo-Ann, who is going to read to us some of what she's been working on. She's only been here, has a 2-month stay because of COVID. She got a little delayed in getting here. I was like, come on, hurry up with all the paperwork. But finally she did arrive, and she's had a good time. She's been very productive, and she's been... She had a novel she was supposed to finish 3 years ago that she's getting around to finishing now. So we all know how that feels, for sure. And yes, she's going to read some of it to us. So come on up, Jo-Ann.
Okay, I am armed.
All right, I'm just going to sit here and...
Yes, I hope so. That is the plan. Okay, I'm sure everyone can hear me, right? Okay, cool. Sure. Mm-hmm. Like this? Oh. Okay, is that better? Okay, cool. Okay, so as Jenna mentioned, I've been working on my second novel, and this is this project's a bit long overdue, really long overdue. I started working on it in 2020, and 2019, and I thought I'd be done in early 2020. Yeah, of course, the universe had other plans, and of course, the pandemic and everything like that. I like to blame the pandemic for everything that, so great. I will be blaming it for this as well. So I couldn't finish my novel because the universe visited the pandemic on us just to make sure that I could not finish my second novel. So now I've been here at the Kerouac house for about, I think, close to 2 months now. I've arrived at the end of March, and I have managed to get some work done, thank goodness, right? In between all the drinking that I've also been doing, and all the traveling to bookstores and everything, because Eric has been taking me to bookstores, and so it's been great. And I saw an alligator, which is even better. Okay, so I'm just gonna get on with it. So I'll just give you a little preamble about the second novel so that you understand what I'll be doing. Okay, so the second novel is about this guy called Lucky. His name is Lucky Lee, right? And he's been, as his name, right? He's been lucky his entire life. He has grown up blessed with. He's the kind of character everybody hates. Okay, right? So he's good looking. He's rich. He hasn't had to work very hard at all for many things. And his sort of best friend, because he doesn't really socialize very much, but it's his sister, right? So, and they're not very alike. She is ambitious and cool and has this amazing career on TV and things like that. And he is a bum. He has never had to work hard, and therefore never doesn't like it, and therefore doesn't do it. Okay, so what happens to Lucky is really his sister dying, and then after that he realizes that there's a whole lot of stuff that now he has to do himself, right? And a year after his sister dies, her cat, which is now his responsibility among a whole bunch of other things, right? The cat begins to talk to him. So the cat just one fine day says to him, "Hi. Where is she? Is she coming back?" Right? And he is freaked out, right? Because now he's thinking, has he gone mad? Is he mad? Is the cat really talking? And all of these things. At some point, he chooses, like most people, to ignore the fact that a cat is talking to him, and he learns to just talk to the cat as if this is completely normal. Every now and then he's still visited by doubt, but most of the time it's okay, right? So yes, exactly. So I don't know, maybe I don't know how I would react if a cat began talking to me. Anyway, so the cat's name is Coconut, and Coconut tells him a lot of stories along the way, right? And some of it is bizarre, some of it is, and he's often left baffled at the end of every single one of Coconut's stories. Okay, I mean, it's a talking cat. You're supposed to be baffled, right? So anyway, right? So I'm going to read like a selection of some of the stuff that Coconut says to him, right? Some of the stories that she tells him, and and then an excerpt from a chapter in the same novel, right? But not about Coconut specifically. And if we have time, I'll read a short story that I wrote earlier this year and finished when I was here. So, okay. Anyway, bear with me. Okay. And if you can't, I mean, the house is quite nice. Yeah. Take a tour. Okay. So, okay. Okay. The first one. So this is Coconut's story about the Wind Woman. Okay, so Lucky is in the kitchen, right? So she says, Coconut says, "Are you eating the whole thing yourself?" Lucky is making long incisions in the side of the fish, the better for it to soak up the sauce he's made. "No, I told you, Dina's coming for dinner." Coconut nudges his elbow with her nose. "Tell her not to come. You have to eat more, or you'll fly away in a storm, like that woman." Lucky puts down the knife. "What woman?" "That woman," Coconut repeats snootily, "the one who flew off in a storm. Aren't you listening?" "She could have been a teacher," says the cat, "always carrying armfuls of books around. Lives close by, near the school with the tall trees that rain little red seeds." "The saga trees?" "Yes, and don't interrupt if you already know what they are, Lucky." The woman, according to Coconut, was tall and thin, like Lucky. Far too thin, also like Lucky. Didn't eat enough, her cat always said. Too many vegetables, not enough fish. And she was always running around and round the neighborhood as if a large dog was after her, and that made her even thinner. And one day, there was a big, big storm. Rain and thunder and lightning and wind, wind, wind. And the wind picked her up and took her away. Coconut gives Lucky a stern look. Lucky stares. "That's nonsense." Coconut shakes her head. "Her cat saw the whole thing." "It's not possible, Coconut. The wind isn't strong enough to pick people up. Not in Singapore, anyway." Coconut mews loudly, waving her tail from side to side. "You weren't there, were you?" "Her cat saw the whole thing." "He never saw her again, Lucky." Lucky turns his head away so Coconut can't see him roll his eyes. He selects a couple of bird's eye chilies from a bowl on a shelf and starts to slice them up. Coconut sits down in front of his chopping board, watching his knife move in minute increments across each pinky-sized chili. "So you have to eat more. I don't want you flying off." Coconut jumped from the countertop onto the floor. "Who knows where you'll end up?" "Maybe Bali? He would like that." Coconut waves her tail. "Maybe a rubbish heap somewhere." The second one. "I hope you know that cabbages can be bad for you," Coconut said, apropos of nothing, as she watched him prepare a drip coffee. Lucky stares. After the chat with Dina, it had struck him again that perhaps something could be wrong with him. He tried not to think too much about it while Coconut was missing, but technically this thing with Coconut was impossible. Intelligence aside, and it was a lot to put aside, cats did not have the physical capacity for human speech, which depended entirely on the shape of the mouth cavity and the tongue and the teeth, and even on having lips. And yet here she was in the kitchen, a cat, lecturing him about the nutritional value of cabbages. Surely there was something wrong about this. And if indeed he was hearing things. Why this sort of thing? Why not a treatise on sustainable living, or some conspiracy theory about the government, or a prophecy, perhaps, foretelling the overthrow of the human race by cats? Or something useful, something to compel him to behave better, work harder, reduce his carbon footprint, save the rainforest, rob the rich, feed the poor. Instead, his possibly deranged subconscious, if he were to accept that it was his subconscious talking to him and not Coconut. Instead, his subconscious preferred to sling cabbages at him, and women swept off by the wind, the odd wisecrack, and sometimes a bit of Kipling. And Pearl, his sister Pearl, of course his subconscious needed to talk about Pearl. Don't make faces, Lucky, Coconut warned him with a slight baring of teeth. If the wind changes, you'll get stuck that way. And now, stupid Western superstitions. But he rearranged his scowl into something more pleasant and sipped his coffee as Coconut told him about the man who only ate cabbage. He ate it for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. He had it in all forms. He had it stewed and stir-fried. He had it in soup. He made it into soup. He pickled it. He made coleslaw. He put it in pies. He bought a spiralizer and turned it into noodles or koodles, which perhaps sounded worse than they tasted. Lucky frowns. How do you know what a spiralizer is? Coconut's tone was crispy. Everyone knows what a spiralizer is. The man who only ate cabbage turned paler and paler every year. This alarmed his wife, his cat, and his doctor. In vain, his wife slipped pork bones into the cabbage soups and spooned slivers of chicken into the coleslaw. In vain, his cat mewed and yowled and sharpened her claws on every cabbage head she could find. In vain, his doctor spoke of balanced diets. Fish. He told him to eat fish. Of course he did. One morning, the man woke up to find he couldn't move. He shouted out for his wife, but by the time she and the cat appeared, all they found was a large head of cabbage underneath the covers. And that's what happens when you only eat cabbage. I don't get it. He turned into a cabbage, or a large cabbage ate him. It was impossible to tell if Coconut was being sarcastic. Next story. So Coconut's full of these, right? Yeah. He's constantly baffled, right? So Coconut has licked her ceramic fish dish clean and is about to tell another story. Lucky can tell by the way she's sitting upright, shuffling her bum back a little for better balance, and swishing her tail very, very slowly back and forth. He's washing the dinner dishes, but he turns his head so she can see that she's got his attention. Has he heard, she wants to know, of the man who tried to sail to the edge of the world? You know the world is round, right? And you know very little about the world, Lucky. The man who tried sailing to the edge of the world was a little older than Lucky, maybe 50 years old. I'm hardly 50. Okay, maybe 40. The cat continues before he can interrupt again. The man, she repeats, was a little older than Lucky and just a little taller. He didn't like his house or his bicycle or his neighbors. He didn't like his job or his boss or the people he worked with. He didn't like his parents or his mother's dog or his brother. So he bought a little sailboat and took it out to sea and then decided he would keep on going until he reached the edge of the world. Again, the world is round. There is no edge. The man sailed on for quite some time. He sailed until there were no birds in the sky anymore, and the waves were bigger and bluer and blacker than any wave he had ever seen. He sailed for 3 days without seeing a trace of land, and he started to think, excellent, I'll soon be at the edge of the world. Dumbass. Be quiet, Lucky. But on the 4th day, a speck of land appeared in the distance. It grew and grew as the man and his sailboat approached, urged by the wind, and suddenly the man found himself on a sandy shore of an island. There was no one around, but there were coconuts on the sand, and everywhere he looked there were trees heavy with ripe fruit, and the man realized how hungry he was. He hadn't eaten in all that time. Just a sandwich and a tube of Oreos. He wasn't planning on staying out at sea for so long, remember? So he ate the fruit and managed to break open the coconuts and drink from them, and then he took a nap. When he woke up, he was surrounded by cats. Cats! Yes, he had ended up at the little-known island of Cat. The island's called Cat. I just said that, Lucky. You really must pay attention. The island of Cat was populated by thousands of cats, all living happy lives. They had never seen a man before, but cats are by nature gracious hosts. So they shared their fish with him and let them sleep in their cave at night while they hunted and roamed about the island. But the man grew sick of fish and he missed his bed and his house and his bicycle more and more. So one day he said goodbye to the cats and got back into the boat. He was never seen or heard from again. Done with the dishes, Lucky has resumed poring through his old notebooks. Wait, really? That's it? He should have stayed with the cats. Coconut lies down on the kitchen table, her tail tapping against the tin cardboard covers of a notebook. He was lucky to have fish. That's it. And, okay, so that's this chapter. And, short story, okay? So, sorry if I'm boring anybody, but yeah, here we are. So this is someone that Lucky meets because, again, once Pearl dies, he finds himself having to do a whole bunch of things and meeting a whole bunch of people that he would never have actually have otherwise met. So this is a chapter about that one such encounter. The woman surrounded by cats makes slow clicking noises as she squats on the pavement, unwrapping newspaper packets of rice and fish. There must be at least 30 cats in the crowd of different colors and shapes and sizes, and everyone waits for his own packet. The woman, hunched over her task and dressed in a matching blouse and trousers of dull green, works quickly, snapping the elastic bands off each packet and over her left wrist in one liquid motion. Next to her are 2 red plastic bags full of newspaper packets. As Lucky watches transfixed, more cats arrive, mewing in response to her click, click, click. Pute, this is not yours, be patient. She picks up a large white cat and sets it firmly down next to her, away from a brownish-grey cat and its dinner pack. Pute gives her an insolent stare, which the woman returns. You be patient. Her voice is low, gentle, and authoritative. Pute looks away. Lucky, standing by himself, barely an arm's span away, goes unnoticed by the woman, Pute, and all the other cats. He's become so accustomed to talking to Coconut and having her talk back that he's a little confused at first that none of these cats are talking. And then, seized by the horror that he's become the kind of nut who expects cats to talk, he almost turns and runs away. Gaja, come here. The woman waves at a large grey cat, larger than Pute, larger than all the other cats. Gaja steps up, princely, handsome, slowly blinking its amber eyes. The woman shifts a few cats in their dinners to make room for Gaja and a packet she unwraps in front of it. Lucky notices it's at least twice the size of all the other cat dinners. Lucky Gaja. A sudden gust of wind sweeps across the white walkway they're on, blowing Lucky's hair into his face, flattening the woman's blouse against her back, rustling the red plastic bags and the many, many newspaper packets of fish and rice. It makes an odd picture, the lanky man in the Depeche Mode t-shirt and white linen trousers lurking near the woman in green and the feeding army of felines with their heads buried in newsprint and tacky headlines. But no one takes the snapshot. Behind them, a ceaseless stream of people move into and out of the train station, impatient to end their homewards commute. A couple of schoolgirls stop to remark to each other how cute the cats are. Neither the cats nor woman pay them any attention. Lucky takes a step closer. They don't pay him any attention either. He's seen this woman hundreds of times, maybe more. She's been here for years, the crazy cat lady of Yuno Station. Every evening at around 6:15, she appears with her plastic bags filled with neat piles of carefully packed portions of food. And every evening, the stray cats of the neighborhood wait for their benevolent queen and their dinner. As Lucky looks on, the woman waits for the cats to finish, and after each cat licks off the last of its dinner and saunters off, she folds up the bit of newspaper it leaves behind into a neat little triangle. When all that's left is a mound of little triangles and a scattering of cats giving themselves a bit of post-dinner grooming, the woman stands up, gathers all the newspaper triangles, and throws them into a nearby garbage bin. The cats look up from their toilet, their heads following her as she walks away. Lucky watches her as she walks past the now empty market and disappears around the corner. For 5 days, he takes the bus to Yuno station and waits for her, then watches her feed the cats and clear up and walk away. Then he goes home and makes Coconut's dinner. On the 6th day, after she unwraps Gaja's dinner, the crazy cat lady of Yuno station stands up and faces Lucky. She is taller than he assumed, and though she's shorter than he is, she manages to stare down her nose at him, her shoulders deliberately thrown back, and her chin lifted. What do you want? Her voice for humans is a lot less gentle and a lot more authoritative. Hello. Lucky feels like he's a kindergartner again, caught peeing in the sandpit. I'm Lucky. Her eyes narrow. For the nth time in his 36 years, Lucky regrets his name being what it is. Right now, it just sounds like he's making a really weird statement. Hi, I'm Lucky. A total non sequitur, and a stupid one at that. If he really wanted to drop a non sequitur, he would have chosen something a little more amusing. Something like, in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly happen. The woman repeats her question challenge there. What do you want? They stare at each other across the sea of cats, and Lucky takes a step closer, doing his best to keep his face pleasant. It's very nice of you to feed the cats, he says. She frowns. Why are you watching me? Her accent is that familiar flat tone sound cultivated at all the good schools. He frowns, unhappy to be surprised. Why indeed should he be surprised? What education is guaranteed against whatever it is that turns anyone into the crazy cat lady of Yunus? I was hoping to talk to you. Please don't let her think this is a pickup. What? Why? I have a question about cats. Her face relaxes slightly, but her posture remains defiant. And you know so many. Lucky takes another step towards her. Instinctively, she looks down at the cats at her. She smiles at Gaja. She looks up at Lucky and her smile disappears. Okay. Not exactly an invitation, but not a rebuff either. Lucky smiles. He'll take it. Are you from the SPCA? No. No, I'm not. The church? I'm not helping you look for Jesus. No. The town council? No. Did Sophia send you? Tell her I didn't eat the cashews. I don't know who that is. I just have a question about cats. He asks her quietly if he can buy her a coffee, and she walks up to one of the stone benches in front of the station and sits down, crossing and uncrossing her arms. I want a Coke. So he buys her a can of Coke, and as he hands it to her, he asks, do any of the cats ever talk to you? The woman doesn't answer right away. She pops open the can and takes a sip. She tugs at the collar of her green dress. She takes another sip. She whistles. She bites her lip. Who's talking? Lucky tries rephrasing the question. Have you heard any of the cats speak? Not me. The woman shakes her head. My hearing isn't good enough. Okay. Do you know anyone whose hearing is good enough? More sips of Coke. She looks into his cup and she shakes her head. Cats shouldn't drink coffee. Lucky nods. You're right. They shouldn't. So he gives up. And this is the last story that Coconut tells him. Right? So it's the man who wanted a tail. Right? Looking very serious, Coconut begins her tale. A tail, as everyone knows, is a fine and wonderful thing. And the man who wanted a tail knew this. He had spent years watching his cat and longed for a tail he could use as a counterbalance so he could leap high into the air and fall on his feet. A tail to swish around when he was annoyed. A tail, he felt, would give him an appearance of dignity and distinction. Far better than platform shoes, which he found uncomfortable. A tail would be a natural conversation piece. He imagined women at bars asking if it was real, perhaps even if they could touch it. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted a tail. He looked everywhere for a tail that would suit him, something distinguished but not too showy, something strong but elegant. He walked many miles in zoos, nature reserves, marshlands, and swamps, staring at the animals, looking for the perfect tail, and in the end, he decided that it was a tiger's tail he wanted. It was a thing of beauty and practicality, sleek, muscular, short-furred, and in a classic print that would work well with a suit or jeans or chinos and Hawaiian shirts on holiday. The tigers in the zoos ignored him, and so he went looking for one in the wild. He trekked through jungles in Sumatra and forests in Pahang. He roamed mangroves in the Sundarbans. When he finally found one, he offered it money for its tail. "What would I want with money?" the tiger asked, waving its long striped tail. "Well," said the man, "you can buy things with it." "What would I do with things?" the tiger asked. "Well," said the man, "you can keep them and look at them when you're bored. And if you're tired of sleeping in trees, you can buy a comfy bed to sleep in. Or a battery-operated fan might be nice on hot days." "No, I think I'd rather have my tail, thank you." The tiger came a little closer. "Tell you what, I'll trade my tail for your head." The man stepped back. "No, I'd rather have my head, thank you." The tiger stepped forward. "I think I'll take it anyway." So the tiger ate the man, who was delicious and might have been just as delicious if he had a tail, but perhaps also less delicious or more delicious. Lucky stares. What the hell? So the guy was a dumbass, but surely he didn't deserve to be eaten. Coconut yawns. It's not in the nature of tigers to consider if things deserve to be eaten. Just bear with me, one more story. So this is the one that I finished when I was here. My second week here, I finished this. So it had been sort of endless for some time now. Like I didn't know how to end it and that kind of thing. But so I did. And so I'll read it. It's not too long, okay? And then we're done with me, okay? Cool. So this is called Dragon Pie. It's a tricky thing to make. Obviously, you first have to kill a dragon. Slay a dragon, if we're sticking to the standard terminology, and we should. A good dragon pie is all about adherence to standard operating procedures, safety and all that. Also, dragons are very particular creatures, very picky about where they live, who they talk to, and they're dangerous. So you've got to be careful, respectful, write that down now. Have you packed your compass? Polo mints? Dragons love polo mints. No one's ever told you that. Well, they do. Come with me and be quiet. Dragons have excellent hearing. Hunting dragons with owl was my favorite thing to do when I was growing up. My mother wanted me to call him Uncle Owl, but he wasn't my uncle. And he said, "You can just call me Owl." He wasn't an owl either, but I thought it was a funny name for a man, and 8-year-olds have a pitiful sense of humor, and so Owl it was. Owl lived next door and came over sometimes for dinner, and on those nights he would sit for hours at the kitchen table and tell us stories. My mother laughed a lot at his stories, far more than she ever laughed at my father's stories before he left, and I couldn't blame her. Owl told funny stories that he didn't know they were funny, and that made me want to laugh, which is different from actually laughing, but not too different. Sometimes I laughed at my mother laughing at how her eyes squeezed shut, how her head shook from side to side, how her face turned red and shiny. Our tiny flat seemed to laugh with her, and we liked that, Owl and I. We talked about her a lot while we hunted, prowling back lanes and parking lots, combing the small patch of wild banana trees and oversized ferns behind my school, clambering up small hills behind the playground. Owl told me I was lucky to have such a clever mother. Not everyone, he whispered, knew the secret of weaving necklaces such as the ones we wore to disguise ourselves in the hunt. I nodded, feeling pleased. My classmate Mirdala was always talking about her mother's dresses, her mother's pretty shoes, but could her mother make necklaces that made her invisible to dragons? Out of nothing but grass and bamboo leaves? Owl thought not, and of course he was right. my mother's necklaces around our necks. We walked heel to toe, knees raised high with every step through our hunting grounds. It was tiring, but Owl said I was a natural. You have to walk the walk if you want to be a proper dragon slayer. Owl was a proper dragon slayer, so skilled he could spot dragons in disguise. We tracked a dragon into a supermarket once, and it seemed to sense us. It quickly turned itself into a bag of apples in the discount section. Only Owl's eyes were quick enough to spot the flash of its tail before it replaced its scaly form with a plastic bag of small green apples, nestled casually among other plastic bags of small green apples in a heap of plastic bags of small green apples. A favorite disguise among green dragons, make note of this. The color makes the transformation easy. Less energy consumption, you see. Dragons like to be efficient. How pleased we were to have caught a dragon that day, even if Owl did pay for the apples. Not being dragon slayers themselves, the supermarket staff couldn't be expected to understand, he said, shaking his head pityingly as he led me towards the cashier counters. He was probably right, but I thought we should have explained it to them anyway. Who knew how many of those bags of apples were actually dragons? But Owl said no. We were here to catch our dragon, and we had caught it. To expose a whole bunch of other dragons would be unsportsmanlike. We tied it up with special string and took it home. Walking the walk, the disguised dragon slung over my left shoulder. Hold tight, Owl warned. There's always a chance of escape with dragons. Cunning things. Sometimes even special dragon string isn't enough to bind a dragon in disguise. See that you hold tight and develop that grip. You'll need it when you start catching bigger dragons, the blue ones. Yes, you'll need a good strong grip for the blues. We walked into the flat with our eyes bright and our knees high, Owl bellowing for my mother to come and see my first dragon. A very, very special occasion in a dragon slayer's life, he said as he thumped me on the back for her benefit. My mother hugged me and said she was so proud. I decided not to take all the credit. I explained that it was our dragon, that it was Owl who spotted it in the supermarket. But then Owl reminded me that it was I who spotted it first, lurking underneath that bird's nest fern. So I did. I did see the tremble in those leaves and pointed out to Owl, who identified it immediately, holding up 3 fingers against his forehead, our code for green dragon. So maybe I did have a claim to this dragon. I stood up a little straighter, and Owl thumped me on the back again, his face proud and solemn and wonderful. You'll always remember your first dragon, and now let's make your first dragon pie. In the kitchen, I looked away as Owl read the oath of dragon slayers over my dragon, scattering its spirit. I might have cried a bit. It's hard to remember for sure. I probably did. And then we scaled the dragon, removing the apples from the bag, peeling everyone until it was a clean, gleaming green-white globe. At my mother's request, Owl helped me declaw the dragon, deftly removing the core and stalk from each apple with her fruit knife. It was different from the way we scaled and declawed the red dragon that had turned itself into a can of corned beef. And different from the method we used on the yellow dragon we snapped a few weeks ago at the farmer's market, the one disguised as a pumpkin. But that was expected. Owl told me from the very start that if I wanted to be a dragon slayer, I had to be flexible. I was a dragon slayer now. I was flexible. By the time Owl and I were done with the scaling, the declawing, and the slicing, my mother had rolled out the pastry and lined her baking dish with it. And then all we had to do was put everything together and put the pie into the oven. Owl and I kept a close watch on it. He hunched over and me on the tips of my toes, staring through the glass door of the oven. We watched the pastry slowly turn from yellow to gold to brown. From time to time, Owl would lift his head and sniff the air, nothing quite like the smell of dragon pie baking. It was a beautiful pie, the most beautiful pie I had ever seen. And when my mother sliced into it, the smell of caramel and apples filled the entire flat and no one could stop smiling. Owl gave me a look from across the kitchen table, and I knew he was proud of me. My mother patted me on the head, which I never liked, but on this was a special occasion, so I kept quiet, and cut me a very large slice of dragon pie. We had dragon blood to go with the pie. Owl produced a tin of powdered blood from his satchel and handed it to my mother. Far too expensive, she scolded, but she looked pleased. Owl showed me how to combine it with hot milk and sugar in a saucepan to make a dark, gleaming drink. Valhalla, Owl told me later, pointing to the label on the tin, was one of the oldest families of French dragon slayers, specialists who had spent years perfecting the science of turning dragon blood into powder. Well, it tasted just like chocolate. And I thought it was a little bitter, even with the extra sugar Owl stirred into my cup, but my mother seemed to like it, and that made me happy. It made me even happier that there was enough dragon pie left for breakfast the next day. Not just for one, but for all three of us, my mother, our friend Owl, and me. And thank you.